Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the Pak-China strategic dialogue and the visit of our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab to China. And obviously they had a lot of sessions regarding the talks, and mostly they talked about the regional and international issues. They did talk about the Pak-China sort of collaboration for the future. Also, Afghanistan was one of the important issues in the discussion, and perhaps we really want to increase our trade with the Chinese. And on top, I'm sure one of the major agenda was regarding the Dasu incident also. Now, before I introduce you to our panelists, let me take you to this report, which is prepared by our production team. Let's have a look.
China and Pakistan have always remained time-tested friends since both countries officially initiated their diplomatic relations in 1951. The modalities of cooperation between two countries encompassed high-level political, economic and military exchanges. The post-2014 era presented a whole new dimension of the interdependent relations between the two countries when China and Pakistan signed a mutually beneficial flagship project of Belt and Road Initiative, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Since CPEC proves to be a hurdle in the US and India's strategic objectives in South Asia, its respective installations and infrastructures have remained the target of Indian-sponsored terrorists and insurgents in Afghanistan and Balochistan. The recent attack on a bus near the Dasu hydropower plant in the Upper Kohistan district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in which at least 12 persons, including 9 Chinese engineers and 2 Frontier Corps personnel, died, was another lame effort to create a trace of bitterness between the two friendly countries. After this attack, the scheduled 10 JCC meeting was postponed and the propaganda was started in the Indian social and electronic media regarding increasing mistrust in Sino-Pak relations. However, all these apprehensions were dissolved when the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, visited China on the invitation of his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, for the third session of the Foreign Ministers' Strategic Dialogue of China and Pakistan, and reaffirmed the stance of both the countries regarding advancement and timely completion of the under-construction projects of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Both countries condemned the terrorist attack in Dasu, and both sides expressed their firm resolve to expose the culprits and their reprehensible designs through joint investigation.
Now, to further analyze about the important visit of the Foreign Minister, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood Saab. Needs no introduction, is a senior columnist, senior analyst, writer. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And on Skype, we have been joined in by Shahid Raza Saab. He's the director, CDAT SASSI. Thank you so much, Shahid Raza, for your time. And we also have with us Masood Khalid Saab, former ambassador to China. Masood Khalid Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time. But let me start off from you, General Saab. First of all, sir, a lot of propaganda campaign by the Indian media after this Dasu incident. Very tragic incident. 9 of those engineers from China, they lost their precious lives, and then 3 Pakistanis as well. Obviously, sabotage, this is what most people are talking about. But this was, again, says something which should not be repeated. Obviously, you can't ensure the security of each and every individual, but obviously, our security is pretty beefed up, especially when we talk about the CPEC. There are 2 divisions looking after the affairs. But still, as you all know, that it's a long, long, long road. So it is impossible to sort of carry out that kind of a, looking after kind of a procedure. But, sir, this incident particularly, raised a lot of eyebrows, that why did it happen? And especially the Indian media, as I earlier mentioned, they got a chance to, again, start maligning Pakistan, that now there's going to be a drift between the 2 countries, and that wasn't the case. I think the most strong exchange of words, the positive ones, that I've heard during this visit, sir, Iron Brothers for that matter, and coming that from the Chinese and the body language and everything. How do you see this visit, sir? Has it really further cemented the ties between the 2 countries?
Yeah, obviously, any visit like this, and coming at a time when, the inimical forces are trying to sort of subvert your relationship with them, obviously had a great significance. And the foreign minister going there and sort of trying to tell the Chinese that our bonds are very strong, and equally the Chinese expressing similar sentiment.
Absolutely.
It's more or less a reiteration of the relationship between the two countries, and also to tell the world, and especially the Indians and others, that this relationship is not going to be affected by these incidents, even though you are trying to sabotage our relationship by creating or instigating these incidents. So I think this was very important that the foreign minister went to Beijing and had a very sort of a frank discussion with them, and also reiterated, both the parties reiterated the strong bonds that exist between the two countries. I have no doubts about it that the Chinese would, of course, will be very disturbed because of this incident, because they value life like all of us, and they think that this was a deliberate attempt. That means we need to sort of beef up our security, and I think they must have also given some guidance and also would also participate in intelligence, so that the joint intelligence between Pakistan and China beefed up would help in ensuring the safety of the Chinese and Pakistanis workers working in these remote areas.
And it is not only about workers, General Sahab. I think anybody who is linked to CPEC in one way or the other. And perhaps that was the primary reason the DG ISI, General Faiz, was also there along with the
and it's
foreign
very
minister.
important. His visit is as equally important.
So let's go to Masood Khalid Saab, who has served as an ambassador in China. Regarding the security exchange, or perhaps beefing up the intelligence to a certain level where we should know what is going on, what's brewing in the mind of people operating in RAW, perhaps to either sabotage CPEC or perhaps kind of create a drift between these two brotherly countries. Your take on that, Masood Khalid Saab?
Thank you. Let me first of all say that this visit was important for two reasons. One was the symbolic part, and the other was the substantive part. Symbolically, the visit took place when two countries are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic relations, number one. This is also the centenary of the Communist Party of China. And number three, that despite this, pandemic, both countries decided to go ahead and hold the third edition of the strategic dialogue between the two countries. So this was the symbolic importance, significance of this visit. Now, as far as substance is concerned, as a practitioner of diplomacy, I would like to highlight some important features which were, mentioned in the joint press release issued. You have talked about the body language and all that. But one thing before I do that, I would like to say that the detractors or our adversaries or the inimical forces, as General Talat said, they must have been disappointed with this statement and with the warmth and the reiteration of strong bonds which exist between our two countries. I'm sure they were hoping that, this incident at Dasu, which they engineered, would sort of create a drift or a serious irritant in bilateral relations, but that has not happened. In fact, both the countries have vowed to consolidate their relations in all domains, and in fact, add fresh dynamism and vitality to this relationship. Because as a diplomat, we need to see what is contained in this statement, the nuances, the wording, and I think the wording is very important here. Of course, there was an exchange on, the whole spectrum of our relations, including security cooperation, intelligence sharing, which is very important in the context of regional developments, in the context of this subversion, which we know the forces which are behind this, trying to sabotage CPEC and creating problems one way or the other. But we decided, we resolved, both countries, that we have, a confidence in this ongoing investigation which is going on of the Dasu incident, and an exemplary punishment, hopefully, to perpetrators. So this was a joint commitment which was made. And on that plane of intelligence sharing, of course, and the beefing up of security you mentioned, We have already raised two divisions for the security of Chinese, but I'm glad to learn today that the government has started a review of the security arrangements for all Chinese who are working in projects, be they the CPEC projects or non-CPEC projects. As you know, DASU is not a CPEC project, but I
Exactly.
think a review is underway whereby security will be enhanced for our Chinese friends. So this was a timely visit, and it has had a good effect on our bilateral relations. And whatever misgivings which our detractors were trying to air or promote, I think they have been addressed.
Now, Ambassador Saab, one quick comment regarding the visit of the DGISI, General Affairs, along with the Foreign Minister. How do you see that particular part, sir?
Well, I think that was important. That was meant to convey our commitment to the security of our Chinese friends who are working in Pakistan, because CPAC is very important for us. And, we know the forces and the elements which are opposing, including India. And they do not want CPAC to succeed. They do not want BRI to succeed. And that is in the overall context of the bigger picture, of US-China tensions and the confrontation which is now shaping up. So if you analyze this in that broader context, you understand why CPAC is being opposed. And CPAC is very important, and it was good to see that in the statement, both the foreign ministers, resolved to speed up CPAC projects and, complete those projects in a timely manner. So I think it was a very good message, and I'm sure that CPAC, which is now picking up momentum, will move ahead with Chinese support and help. And another important thing is that Chinese again reiterated their support for Pakistan's territorial integrity and independence, and for South Asian stability. They said that Kashmir is an issue which needs to be resolved on the basis of mutual respect and on the basis of equality and in the light of UN Security Council resolution. So I think that is a very important message which has gone across. And I think a DGISI's visit was important, and this is a regular exchange which takes place between the security apparatus of both countries. But this time around, after DASU incident, his inclusion in the delegation was, I think, a good move on the part of Pakistan.
All right. Now, Shahid, Raza, first of all, obviously, when we talk about the Indian conspiracies against Pakistan, whether regarding the sabotage of the CPEC, or you perhaps have seen what's going on in the FATF issue, again, they have openly admitted that they tried their level best to make sure that Pakistan should either be blacklisted or stay in the grey list. So that is another aspect. You talk about boycotting playing cricket with Pakistan. That seems to be another problem. Basically, it seems that India is not at all ready to have some sort of conducive ties with Pakistan. Forget about the talks and Kashmir issue or whatever. Now, perhaps it seems that the differences between Pakistan and India as neighbors, I mean, they are really, really, really increasing. Even if you look at the slogans used in the election in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, I mean, they perhaps primarily were against Modi. You see, I mean, this is what is happening, and we used to hear that anti-Pakistan sentiments really play a very positive role for any political party in India right before the elections or perhaps during the campaign, and that's how they win. So same sentiment has started there as well. Now, let's throw light. I mean, do you think that this difference is going to grow further rather than, putting a check on it at some stage? Because at the end of the day, I mean, God knows what can happen in this region. It's a nuclear area. Perhaps three countries, Pakistan, India, China, all are nuclear states. So what the future of this region, it seems as if it is at stake. Your take, sir. Shahid Raza.
Hello, Faisal. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you can hear me fine.
If you could speak a little louder, sir, that would be better.
Okay, thank you very much, Faisal. Can you hear me now?
Now, perfectly fine. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me again. I would give you a very quick overview of what India is doing in the region at the moment. For example, this particular visit, the strategic dialogue that is taking place between China and Pakistan, it is happening at the offset of the current situation in Afghanistan. India has a lot of issues in the region at the moment. They have a lot of issues to worry about. Afghanistan is one of those issues. CPEC is one of those issues. And I'm sure that the strategic dialogue that took place today, that took place this week, would have included India as a major theme. On top of discussions on Afghanistan's future, the exit of U.S. forces, obviously CPAC and economic partnership and its future security cooperation, and the Dasu incident vis-a-vis the Indian intervention in CPAC and subversion. So obviously, you have already mentioned, and I completely agree with you, that India is it is not really ready to enter into a meaningful cycle of negotiations with Pakistan. And let me take you back to the recent interview between the National Security Advisor, Mr. Moeed Yusuf, and Karan Thapar, in which Dr. Moeed Yusuf raised the same point. He stated that India has not taken any meaningful steps. It has not taken any meaningful measures to convince Pakistan that it is even willing to talk. And if you have brought out the public sentiment in Azad Kashmir, and it is understandable because India has been oppressing Kashmiris across the line of control, and obviously, and naturally speaking, there would be a lot of public resentment in the Azad Jammu and Kashmir region as well, because India has really not only taken the sovereignty of the Kashmiri nation, they have also upped the ante as far as the demographic engineering is concerned. The Kashmiri public is concerned that they are being turned into a minority as an instrument of oppression by the Modi regime, and it appears that the Modi regime is actually playing for time rather than actually engaging in meaningful negotiations with Pakistan. So it is pretty clear that they are not going to take the measures that have been recommended by Pakistan as a precursor to meaningful negotiations. And at the same time, let me just make this point very clear. After what happened in Kandahar, the Indian bases, Indian covert bases that were being used against Pakistan in Kandahar have been evacuated, and it has not gone down well in New Delhi. They are panicking because they are losing the ability to inflict terrorism in Pakistan as a policy. So at this point in time, when they have taken steps such as conducting a bomb blast in Lahore and possibly attacking Dasudem, it is pretty clear that China and Pakistan, coming back to what General Masood stated earlier, that there needs to be a joint intelligence response to this situation. In my point of view, Faisal, and I will end my comment here, I believe that up until now, China and Pakistan were they were counterbalancing India, but now they will have to counterforce India as well. Because if you do not counterforce India, then these acts of subversion and terrorism are going to continue. Thank you.
Now, General Sahab, if you remember, normally whatever used to happen in Pakistan, and when the authorities or the law enforcement agencies or the intelligence agencies perhaps would look into the details, they would always end up finding the truth, and they would say that, Indian involvement is there, RAW is involved, and they would come up with very genuine and legitimate proofs. Now, interestingly, sir, there are two things happening. One is that because they are trying to bleed Pakistan, I'm talking about the Indians, but they're also attacking the interests of the Chinese at the same time. And this is where the joint declaration or the joint statement or the joint understanding, let me use this word also, comes in. Do you think, sir, Pakistan and China together now on the international forum, or perhaps you talk about the UNGA or Security Council as China as the member, can raise this at the top level so that if you have the proofs, you present there, and then you move forward?
You see, what we have to understand is that India is very closely associated with the US in the sense that they are their strategic partners. And one of the reasons why the US has made India a very important strategic partner is to deal with China. That is essentially the aim of the US, to sort of have India as its partner, strategic partner, to counter the influence of China at the regional level. So we have to understand this. So there is a very strong level of cooperation, intelligence, military hardware, software, and in space everywhere between India and the US. And the object is to strengthen India so that it is able to counter.
Will the Indians, with all the possible support, I'm saying all the possible support of the Americans, can counter China, sir?
No, they cannot. They cannot.
And what is the reason for that? So India, they have almost the same number of people living in India, perhaps if not more. And then you talk about the technology, beta, you talk about that, you talk about sharing of intelligence, sharing of the bases, manufacturing of the American military hardware in India. Don't you think, sir, that is going to give a lot of boost?
You made a very good point. The fact is, this is exactly the reason why they are focusing more on Pakistan and less on China, because they know that they don't have that capability of countering China. And although they will do whatever it is possible, within certain limits, to sort of counter China's influence, because it is also in India's interest. The narrow way that they are looking at the situation in the region and globally, that they want to weaken China. And then initially they had been wanting to compare themselves with China, but there is so much of difference between the power potential of China and the power potential of India that China does not even give them a serious sort of a thought to this challenge. Actually, for China, it is the US which is a challenge. And for the US now, it is China that is a challenge. So, and then the division between US and China, because of the present US policy and that also of Trump, to weaken China so that it doesn't rise to the point that it challenges US, has brought in a lot of difficulties for many countries.
So it's like a tag team.
Yeah. So that is exactly the situation today. So I think Pakistan is trying to tread that course of trying to have even a reasonably good relationship with US, at the same time extremely close strategic partnership with China. But it poses a huge challenge. And we also have to understand that all what India is doing, the Americans and the Western world is closing its eyes, although they know fully well that what is being done by by India and the type of statements that are coming out, the actions that they are taking, they are all contrary to diplomatic norms and behavior of nations against each other. But yet they will not utter a single word. So this also shows to what extent the Western world and the US is leaning towards India in order to use it to counter China. But India is clever enough; it will not, go to a certain beyond a certain limit, because it knows its limitations, as has happened many a times, and especially the way that they tried to militarily counter China, in the Akasi region and other places, and the type of thrashing that they got, they still have not been able to get over it.
I mean, that is one incident. I believe a lot more has been happening recently also. I've been reading about it. Now, Ambassador Saab, you're a very senior diplomat. You have served in many countries, including China. And the most, I would say, the top notch of the Foreign Office normally serves in China. Now, the point is, sir, what we have studied or what we have learned over a period of time, that diplomacy is the art of balancing, having more friends, having less enemies. Now, sir, since the inclination of Pakistan was always towards the West from day one, whatever the reason was, but we were, like, whether you talk about Sentosi, you talk about so many other issues regarding the military hardware from 50s to 60s, 70s and all the way. Then the era of the Soviet Union, comes in when they invaded Afghanistan, and so much more. Then later on, this war on terror, again, we were the non-NATO ally. The highest price which we paid, never been recognized by the Western world, the kind of sacrifices that we have given, by the way. Now, sir, and then this shift towards China, which Pakistan and China, they were always very close. But now there seems to be a bone of contention. The Americans want you to stay away from CPEC. You call it the backbone of Pakistani economy. That is what the future is all about, which is true. You talk about so many other, threat of sanctions on Pakistan. For example, FATF issue, again, if the Americans were supportive, of, things would have been very different for us. So, sir, that art of balancing, is it really there in the Foreign Office, or will it be a difficult task? If so, why?
Absolutely. Before I advance my argument, let me say, we have been, a part of the Western alliance and all that, which you alluded to, but at what cost? What have we gained in net terms? So I leave it there. And then I would like to say that balancing is important, but we have, every country, every nation has to safeguard and protect its national interest. And we have to see what is in our national interest. Our national interest, my take is that first of all, we have to see this, the Indian designs. What are Indian designs? We talk of Kashmir, we talk of other issues with India. But right now, the Indian designs are to create a rift, a drift, friction between Pakistan and China. This has to be understood. And I'm confident that they will not succeed eventually through subversion and through other tactics, through misinformation, through this hybrid war, whatever. They will not succeed. But hypothetically, if they succeed, then what happens? China, what they are aiming at is that China somehow retreats or withdraws from its close relationship with Pakistan. Now, if India succeeds in its designs, who will benefit or who will lose? The answer is obvious. So I think our foreign policy needs to be balanced in the sense that we know that China is our neighbor, China is our strategic partner, and China is a reliable and a trustworthy friend. And China has helped us. Look at this pandemic. Which other country was there to help you out? Even now, So, and I can give you 10 other examples. My point is that China's influence in this region is going to grow more and more because of Afghanistan, after US withdrawal from Afghanistan. And in coming years, China's influence in this region will grow. So we have to be cognizant of this reality. While US is on the retreat, its influence in our region will be exercised through India. So we have to counter India. There is a clear-cut nexus between India and the US, FATF, NSG,
if you're countering the narrative of the Americans, I mean, don't you think that we are creating another enemy which happens to be the superpower, sir?
No, we need not create enemies. We need to create more friends in our foreign policy
That's what I'm saying.
execution. What I'm saying is that while you maintain the current level of your relations with China, and in fact, strengthen them further, because it is in your long-term interest. And you also, at the same time, try to improve your relations with USA. Tell them that it's not a zero-sum game, that we want friendly,
it can't be a zero-sum game.
Good relationship with
I mean,
USA.
what do we need to do? I mean, when we say we need to improve our relationship, I mean, they have got certain very straightforward, I'm sure you must have gone through 7-8 basic points, I mean, where they have issue with Pakistan. And they are primarily, I mean, if we follow even half of them, that means that you need to deviate from the Chinese, and which you can't afford to do.
No, we can't afford to do that. So they have to be told plainly that that's not possible. And we have many friends in this region. We have now good relations with Russia. We are trying to promote our relations with Central Asian republics. We have to operate in our region. And we should be rational. If somehow Modi changes his mind and there is a possibility of some improvement in relations with India, we should welcome that. And we are not for conflict or confrontation in this region because that is also not in our interest. But we have to defend ourselves. And China, relation with China offers us diplomatic and strategic space. That is a key point, a core point in our relationship. And in this statement, both sides have expressed, reiterated rather, their commitment to take measures to safeguard their common interest in the region. This has to be borne in mind. So what are those common interests? Common interests are preservation of stability and peace in our region, promotion of development, promotion of CPAC. We can't compromise on that. We should be self-reliant. We should use CPAC as a vehicle to create self-reliance in our economy. This is, I think, a learning curve, and Pakistan can move ahead. We have withstood pressures. There were pressures in the past also. This is not a new thing which is happening. We are facing pressures from USA or from other Western powers. This pressure will continue because we are in a volatile region. This pressure will continue. But Pakistan has to see what is in its ultimate national interest. And my take is that our national interest dictates that we not only maintain our strategic cooperation with China, but in fact enhance it. And at the same time, we try to improve our relations with the United States. And I think it is possible. It is doable.
All right. As they say that in politics, nothing is impossible, as it is the art of impossible. But coming to you now, I said one important area. I was just going through this very interesting, in fact, for Ministry of Foreign Affairs of People's Republic of China, what Mr. Wang Yi said, and then what was the reply of our own foreign minister. Now, interestingly, they said that China's loss is the loss of Pakistan, and we'll treat the Chinese people on our land as our own people, and we'll be protecting them. I think Chinese, perhaps they are one of those, nationals of a country which are the most accepted, most welcomed in Pakistan. I would say again, the Indian Sikhs are also, but Chinese nationals. So that means that the overall, bond between the two countries, whether you talk about the people-to-people contact, you talk about our students going and studying in China in various fields, including medicine. Mostly they used to go to Europe or America for that matter. So China is coming up in IT, China is coming up medicine, engineering, you name it. Only problem that was of language. Now most of our private schools, they are also teaching Chinese language, Mandarin. So that is one important area. Now, sir, let me bring that to you, General Saab, the same question. The bond between these two countries. I remember I happened to go to China in 2011. I was making a documentary there. This was prior to CPEC engagement. And the kind of love, affection, which I got from the regular random people was unbelievable. Whether you're talking about, traveling on the road and somebody would come and say, are you from Pakistan? They would call Pakistan, Pakistan. And you would say yes, and they would make you say, don't mind, but I want to take a picture, and they would take a selfie. I remember, and I was like, why? Why is this so? And then once I met so many students in various universities, I mean, all of them knew about Pakistan. The kind of bond which existed there was amazing. But the kind of potential these two countries have, I mean, especially when you talk about economy, minus CPEC, let's do that for a moment. Don't you think, sir, that is an amazing way that, more students from China should come to Pakistan. There should be student exchange programs, game exchange programs. Kids should go and learn gymnastics. Look at the Olympics these days. I mean, we hardly have anybody in our contingent. Look at China. I mean, winning and bidding. And I mean, there's so much we can share, starting from music to food. I think the most eaten food other than the Desi food in Pakistan is Chinese.
Very true.
See? So your take on that?
There's no doubt about it that Pakistan can learn a lot from China. There is so much that we could learn from them, and I'm sure they could also learn from us, our experience and all that. So this is a process that should continue actually, and we expect that we have already learned a few things from China. And one of the first things that we should try to really learn and copy is the hard work of the Chinese, the way that they sort of continue to sort of put in so much of work and effort. And when they decide to go for any project, the way that they try to complete it, and they will not rest till they have completed it, and they try to do it in a very perfect way. So I
Look
think
at the kind of bridges they have made.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable projects, sir.
You see, you mentioned that you have been going to China. You know, I have been going to China since 1966, and I've seen how China has transformed itself.
Oh, yes.
And in a miraculous manner in the last 30 to 40 years that I've been traveling to China. So the first thing that you have to learn from China is that you can transform your country. You can transform yourself. You can become the world's one of the leading sort of industrial powers. You can transform the country by, bringing about full education in the country. You can bring about prosperity to the point that you don't have people who are below the poverty level. China recently announced that it had no person who was poor in China. This is a great, great achievement for a people which are 1.2 billion people in this world. So I think it's an extraordinary achievement. So I think the credit goes to successive leadership, in China, but more so to the present one. I think they are continuously trying to build the economy. And then what is important is to learn from them how they prioritize their national goals. For instance, their priority has been economy. And they have also tried to link the world or link the several countries of the world, through economic partnership. They have not gone for military alliances. They have not gone for political alliances. They have gone for economic integration, economic benefits, giving economic benefits, and also in return getting economic benefits from other countries. So their route has been economic, and they have been very successful. They have economic relationship, BRI, with 126 countries. And so I think, so one of the major things that one can learn from them is that you should focus on the economy. And to focus on the economy, you need to focus on education, you need to focus on technology, you need to focus on science, on modern education, and also discipline. Without discipline, you cannot have good politics, you cannot have good economy.
As Quaid-e-Azam said, unity, faith, and discipline. I think these three, this is the most important part of your character.
And they are practicing it.
And the Chinese are practicing it. Actually, the Far Eastern countries, they are all practicing it. You're united. United we stand, united we can do, as Chris Como always says. Now, sir, last 2 minutes, and I would like to put another question to you, Ambassador Saab, and that is regarding Pakistan and China. Now, sir, a lot of people, this perception, it's still there, that look what happened in Hambantota. See, the Chinese invested in Sri Lanka and they couldn't pay back, and they had taken over that particular port for 99 years. And this is what happened in Africa. They would give you a few examples. When it comes to Pakistan, we need to be very, very practical also, that anything can happen anytime, provided everything remains stable, everything remains constant. Do you think Pakistan will be in a position to pay back the loans or the kind of investments the Chinese have made? Because that is going to be something really important. And we are looking at something maybe at later stage around 100 billion, maybe more than that. And that is almost 1/3 of your total economies. Sir?
So I think our external debt is about $100 billion, or probably slightly less. And the loans which we owe to China in terms of repayment is about 6 to 7% of that volume. So I don't think so, number one. Number two, the repayment period is quite long. And number three, that these were mostly in the form of concessional loans and grants, and some are, of course, preferential buyer's credit and commercial credits also. But look at the total spectrum of the economic assistance. When you have a balance of payment support issue, then you, of course, the Chinese are there. And when you have pandemic, then you have the Chinese. And when you have your nuclear program, civilian nuclear program, power plants, you get the Chinese investments, and so I don't think the type of relationship which we have, and if you look at the history of this relationship, China came forward in late 60s and 70s to help you build this heavy mechanical complex in Texala at the industrial pace, which is, for your big plants and defense production industry. And look where we have reached. Karakoram Highway also, and now several projects, for example, in Gwadar are being executed through Chinese grant. And for socio-economic projects also, China has committed about $1 billion. So I think this relationship is slightly different. And I remember the last Chinese ambassador, even, when he was pressed on this point too much by some of the ill-informed, media people about the debt and this and that. And he said, look, we have a different kind of relationship with Pakistan. If Pakistan cannot pay our debt, we will not even ask for it. So we have to understand the debt and the gravitas of this relationship. This is different. I'm not saying that we should go to China and say that please forgive our debt. No, that is against a self-respecting nation. If we have borrowed, we should pay. But if we face some problems in repayment, I'm sure our Chinese friends will be more than willing to accommodate our request. And at the same time, as I want to say it again, CPAC is not something a dole for us.
All right. Masood Khalid, I'm so sorry to intervene here. Really sorry to intervene. I'm totally out of time now. But I would like to say thank you so much for your participation. And we would love to have you again in the coming days so that we can elaborate on this furthermore. But thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much, sir. And always a pleasure, General Saab, to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presence. And that's all we have for this time. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.